Welcome to Do You Even Live Here, a podcast that celebrates Western North Carolina, our changing state, and the communities that make this state a great place to be.
Today, we'll be talking about the Healthy Opportunities Pilot. It's a program that was tried out between 2022 and 2025, and it helped so many people by meeting their needs before they got sick, by helping them with food, housing, and other needs. It sounds crazy, but doing it this way saves some money in the long term because healthcare is so expensive. The state isn't funding this anymore, but here's the thing. They could. And it was the subject of a mini documentary called The Root of Good Health from our partner and supporter, Beacon Media, as well as Carolina Ford and Resource Rural. And our guest today, who I'm so excited to have, who's also a Henderson County resident, who I've met many times before, big fan of hers, big fan of her grandson. We have Ms. DeBorah Ogiste. She's featured in the documentary, and we're excited to hear a little bit of a documentary first.
We had mold in the house. And my grandson had autoimmune things and lung issues. We were both sick all the time. I remember calling someone and saying, listen, I have mold in my house. Is there anything y'all can do about it? They said, well, HOP will take care of it. We have funds that can help you. The mold was so bad on this side of the house, they had to gut the bathroom and start all over. It was in the walls, it was in the floor. I wouldn't have been able to afford to get the work done. That network was developed from HOP. Some of the people I don't even know, but they all stepped up and just took care of it.
And so, DeBorah, I've not had a chance to really get to meet you. I'm not in Henderson County. It feels like every good person in North Carolina was hanging out at that event except me. So I'm a little embarrassed, but I want to get to know you a little bit better. And I want the folks that are listening to be able to get to know you. And so first off, where are you from, right? And what's your connection to Western North Carolina and Henderson County?
Well, I was born in West Virginia and was raised in New York. And I've lived up and down the East Coast. I have been in Western North Carolina since 2004, starting out in Asheville and then coming to Hendersonville when I was getting ready for retirement.
And so that route, that West Virginia route, you very much are kind of connected to the Appalachian Mountains, I would guess, right? Being on the Eastern Seaboard, understanding what these rural communities are like.
Yes, that was the thing. It reminded me of home here.
Where in West Virginia were you from?
Gully Bridge,
okay,
which is Fayette County.
And a lot of similar struggles and considerations with rural health systems in West Virginia, similar to here in Western North Carolina. So those challenges were probably familiar to you and the communities that you grew up in, right?
Yes, they were.
Wow. DeBorah, I'm kind of curious. How did you end up in West North Carolina from West Virginia?
I was raised in New York, and then I went down and lived in South Florida for 10 years and worked my way up to Atlanta. And then I had a friend that moved here that invited me to visit, and I just fell in love. I worked for Volvo Construction Equipment as a corporate trainer and had a part-time job as a minister at a small Unity church in Asheville.
I'm really interested because you've been in New York and you've been in Florida and you've been in Atlanta. These are all places that have really distinct Black communities. Like you go out the door, the Black community's there, they're visible, you know who they are. But when you're in West North Carolina, and I'm from Asheville, growing up in Fletcher my entire life, it isn't particularly a large Black community. It is in Atlanta for sure, right?
Yes.
And so how has that experience been for you? And what do people need to know about the Black community here in West North Carolina? You have some great, I think, Black art behind you and figures. So I'm interested in what do we need to know about the Black community here? I'm also a member of the Black community, but I'm interested in your perspective.
Well, it was interesting at first because my friend that got me to move here was white. He passed away a few months ago. And I used to come visit, and he used to say, you need to move here. And I was like, where are the Black people? You know, I'm not moving here. Where are the black people? But what I have found since I've been here, there are communities that are tucked away. They kind of keep to themselves. But I find that the community, the black community in Hendersonville, was a lot more open and inclusive than the black community in Nashville. So once I moved here, I felt like, oh gosh, I found my people. I'm home, you know.
Yeah, say more about that. I think that's really interesting. We had an Asheville comedian who's a black man come on the show. His name is P.D. Smith McDowell, and we talked a little bit about the black community. And I'm paraphrasing when I'm saying this, but he was like, "Yeah, we're here, and sometimes we're in each other's living rooms, and we know where we're at. Like we know where each other is at, and you kind of I think alluded to that as well. So, what was it in Hendersonville that was like?" This is a welcoming community. These are my people here. I mean, was there a particular moment or what happened?
Well, I think it was because they more resembled. I grew up in New York, but I grew up in Long Island in a small black community. And they kind of resembled the community I grew up in. You had your little community leaders and you had your business owners and things like that. And so, and you didn't have the classism that I saw in Asheville, which was very similar to the classism that I saw in Atlanta.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? What did that look like?
It looked like you were either in or out. And it was definitely, I was an outsider. And that was felt. I mean, I'm more of an insider now, even in Asheville, than I was then when I first moved here. But it was more that I was an outsider. And it was like families that had been here for generations that owned property and did things. And they just weren't very welcoming to outsiders.
I'm glad that you do feel welcome now in Henderson County. That makes me very happy as a Henderson County resident. And again, we met several times. I got to hang out with you and your grandson, and a part of the community is a house, right? It's your home. And at some point you moved into your home here in Henderson County, and you're there with your grandson, right? Tell us about your grandson.
Well, he's 11 years old and a lot of energy. But I'm raising my grandson. I've had him since 2021 when my daughter passed away.
As I learned and listened to your story, I just want to say how much I resonated to it as somebody that my own grandmother stepped up and helped raise me and was vital to me being where I'm at in life. I think without her, I would have never went to college, certainly would never be a mayor. And just the role that grandmothers have in raising children and preparing them for life, it meant a lot to me. So I saw a lot of myself even in that story. And, I'm definitely rooting for you and your grandson. He seems like a great kid from the little clip that we saw. And I just really related to that and wanted to give you your flowers for that, because an 11-year-old kid has a lot of energy and grandparents typically don't have the most energy, right?
Yeah, that's it. But he's a good kid. He works hard.
And so as we're talking about that, the topic of your grandson's illness and the sickness that he was getting related to mold came up in that clip. And obviously that was something that you were navigating as somebody that was raising him, right? And so would love to hear a little bit more about what those health challenges looked like as you were kind of navigating the need for some of this assistance.
Well, he was born a preemie, and when he was born, his lungs weren't developed. So he had lungs issues, and he had autoimmune problems. So when I got custody of him, it was a lot of hospitalizations. He was in the hospital every couple of months, for anywhere from 3 to 5 days. One time he was in there for 7 days. So it was always something, a lot of ambulance visits and things like that. Navigating that, and if anything passed by him, he got sick. So it was navigating all of that, because he was 6 years old when I got him, and it was tough. And using food as medicine through the HOP program did a lot for managing his illnesses. Because right now, where we were hospital visits every few months, we haven't even had one this year. So
Wow.
that's big. It's made a really big difference in our lives.
And everybody knows, right? Those hospital visits are not cheap. That was what Preston said at the start, right? Is that prevention, getting on the front end, removing some of these things that's leading to this illness saves everybody money in the long run. The systems, the individuals, and you know, you raising him, that's already a lot of an investment for you and your family. And a hospital visit, an ambulance ride, that really stacks up. What was that like to navigate the costs associated with some of that illness?
Well, usually I'd end up having to pay, if we ended up in ambulance, I would end up having to pay ambulance fees. You know, I would be charged for that. Fortunately, for the hospital visits, they were covered with Medicaid.
And that's the ambulance visit. I will say, I don't know if I've ever shared this story on air. I've definitely shared it with a few folks, but growing up, my dad, it was a single parent family. So it was just me and him, and my grandma would step up when he was really pushed, you know, to a place where he needed some help. And he actually injured himself. He cut his foot when I was 10 years old. It was on my 10th birthday. And it was really bad. And his immediate reaction was, I can't afford the ambulance. So this guy ties his foot in a garbage bag and tries to drive himself to the hospital. And the Joker passed out, right, trying to do it because he had no business doing that. And thankfully, right, by the grace of everything, was able to get medical care and eventually rode the ambulance. But I think few folks realize what it's like to navigate a situation that is life and death, right? You've got to get your grandson to the hospital. You know, in my dad's case, I've got to get to the hospital. And then you have to do this calculus of how much is the ambulance going to cost?
Right.
People don't realize that. And it's a really tough road to navigate. But as we talk about that, what do you think would have happened if HOP hadn't have helped with the mold and those issues?
I believe that he still would be getting sick. We still be in the hospital every couple of months.
I know one of the things that often comes up with programs like this is folks say, oh, maybe that's just a handout, right? They try to denigrate the folks that need these benefits. And you said something before we started recording is it's not a handout, it's a hand up. And I want to give you the opportunity to respond to some of what we hear from legislators in Raleigh and community leaders that put stigma on programs like this.
You know, I think that it's understanding that everybody has a story. And they didn't just wake up one day and say, oh, I don't want to be responsible for anything in my life. They have a story that got them to this place. I mean, I personally had started working when I was 12 years old. I remember in New York, in Long Island, for a teen program. And I've worked, and I'm 68 now. And I have worked ever since then. So it wasn't like I just one day just decided I didn't want to work. And I was in Florida. I worked for the state of Florida. I left there. And when I started looking at my retirement, I called down there and found out I miscalculated. I was 2 months short of 10 years. So I lost my pension. I lost everything. But however, they said, well, if you come down here, you can work a part-time job for 12 months, and then you get your full pension and your health care and all of that. So I was like, cool. So I took early retirement, January 2021. And my plan was to rent my house out, go to Florida for a year, do this job, and also start a business where I was doing remote administrative work for small construction companies in the Henderson County area because I came out of the construction business. And so that was January. I retired. And then in February, my daughter passed away of a heart attack. So now here I am with no pension, you know, to speak of, and boom, I'm raising a 6-year-old. It wasn't my plan. And so everybody has a story that got them to that place. And I think that's what people need to realize is, no, they didn't wake up one morning and want to live off the state. There's a story. If I started working at 12 and I retired at 62, how many years, let's do the math, did I put into the system? And I'm not the only one that has a story.
No, we deeply thank you for sharing that story. That's one of the things we want to do so much on the podcast is, tell these really important stories and advocate for the policies that, matter so deeply to you and Dalton and I. And one of the things that resonated so much with me, Deborah, that you shared is, you worked all these years and you paid into this system. And it's one of the frustrating things that I think people tell, regular, just working class folk in America. They tell people, if you work hard your entire life, that you're gonna get the car and you're gonna get the house and you're gonna get the all the things that are promised in this, in this American dream. But sometimes when people, do all the right things, they still end up in, such an unfortunate situation. And I deeply appreciate you sharing your story about your daughter. And we send our condolences to you and your grandson and, your entire family. That is, an incredible story. And you stepped up to raise your grandson. But I think that speaks to some of the language that we see politicians use when they say, these people that need these handouts. And again, like you said, it's not a handout, it's a hand up. They call these folk lazy, and they call them, they say they don't want to work, when again, you worked your entire life into this system, and all you're asking for is some food for your family. And to me, that's the least that, our government could provide you, to, provide you a healthy lifestyle, a safe home, safe transportation, and, reliable food. That's what the Healthy Opportunities Pilot provided.
And so many of these people that put the stigma on folks that need a little assistance, I think, don't take the time to hear stories like that. And that's the issue, is it's so much easier to remove yourself from the problem and act like all these people are the same and all their stories are the same, and it's just, oh, they just expect this, instead of doing the work that really we require of community leaders and elected officials, which is getting out there and realizing sometimes people need help, and that's okay, right? And in this case, right, it provided some real, potentially life-saving for your grandson and you that were dealing
Yes.
with health issues. And I think that's just so important to continue to underscore and make folks realize that many people work incredibly hard and the system has failed them. And a good society is one that takes care of folks that are down on their luck, not punishes them.
And I think that the big thing about the HOP program is looking at health as a holistic component, looking at health through environment, stress, availability for safe transportation. And as you look at health holistically, as Mayor Preston said, it cuts down the cost of healthcare. If I don't have to go to the hospital every 2 months for 7 days, it cuts down on healthcare. If I can get to a doctor's appointments because I have a working vehicle, it's going to cut down on hospitalizations. So looking at everything more holistically is what makes the HOP program not only essential, but part of a fabric of building community that is safe and sustainable for everyone.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we have so many organizations in Henderson County and they were featured in that documentary, that provided so many of the, life-saving tools that these Medicaid dollars were going to, that you're referring to, whether it's the food or the transportation. I mean, it really cuts down on healthcare costs on the long run. I mean, on the front end, you see that dollar, but now we're kind of looking throughout the United States, and we're seeing, other states replicate the program that was started here in North Carolina, Deborah. And I got to say, it's embarrassing that this isn't funded here in North Carolina, and we started here, but these other states are seeing that, we're building community here and we're taking care of our, our North Carolinians, and they're replicating the program that's not even funded here in North Carolina right now. And to me, that's deeply frustrating, and I'm sure it is for you as well.
Yes, it is. And then it's just amazing because here we created the perfect model. And everybody knows that, but our legislators. And basically it's because, like I said before, they're not listening to the stories. They're not hearing the stories. And they're not aware of the personal. They're looking at numbers. not people.
Yeah, and we need to look at people. You know, we talked about building community, and you know, you, me, we're all a part of the Henderson County community. And with that being said, when we were at the Hendersonville show, when we were celebrating you and so many other people and the documentary, we're talking about things that you're doing in the community. And you know, one of the things that you're doing is raising that adorable grandson of yours that I need to be at one of his soccer games or basketball games. I'm waiting on the invite, DeBorah, and I haven't received it. That makes me sad.
You'll get
but I know
one.
it's coming.
Well, you know, when I first became a grandmother, raising a grandchild, I looked for help. So I went online. I was looking for, okay, I need some help because this is like really different. My friends are going on cruises and now I have a child. And I couldn't find one. I found one in Texas. So I started one. And I started an organization called Grand Blessings, a support system for grandparents raising grandchildren. And was able to run a pilot for a year. That was pretty successful. And now there are other organizations that are doing different things and are recognizing grandparents who are raising grandchildren. But we have a road because we're not recognized in the foster care system. We're not recognized and able to get assistance that we need because when you're living on a fixed income, it's hard to do things like basketball and football and music lessons and things like that, because as you prepared for that when you were having your children, you didn't prepare to do that one more time. So finances is funny. And so those are the things that, and simple things like the fact that education is different. And the way they do math is different. And you trying to show them the way that you know, and the teachers are like, no, we don't do it like that. We got little boxes that they have to, different things like that. So these are all things that need attention in the school system, programs that need to be set up to help these grandparents. And we won't even get into the legal ramifications of custody and things like that.
And so you mentioned not being recognized as your grandson as a foster child. What's the significance of that? Let our listeners know.
It's financial, so you don't get any financial help. At times, you don't even. So it's hard to get medical help at times for some of the grandparents. You don't get programs and things that foster care children can access. You don't have with your child. If you were to take say I took him and I put him in the foster care system, he would go into a stranger's home and they would get financial assistance to raise him. And that's not something a grandparent will get. You know, it's like that's a family problem. And so that leg up, that help to ensure that this child is going to be taken care of in a fashion that'll keep them off the streets.
That's such a fascinating perspective. I mean, I feel like it can't be addressed enough, all the blind spots in these systems, right? That will push people to the brinks, right? Like that's the story of so much of this. And I just feel like exactly what you're doing, DeBorah, like shining a light on this, telling your story. I think exactly what you're saying. I have a story to share. This program helped me, right? And here's the real human element of it is so important. So I just want to thank you for getting out there, for showing up to all these events, for working with Beacon and really Hop to highlight this, and taking the time to talk to us, Preston and I, as we try to wrap our head around really what this program means at the human level.
Well, I want to thank you and commend you for doing your part at getting the word out and allowing people to, not just with this issue, but all of the issues and things that you guys just shine a spotlight on so that the locals can know what's going on in our communities.
Everybody, this has been DeBorah Ogiste. And DeBorah, do you want to plug anything as we get ready to wrap up? Where can people support you? What can people, how can people stay in touch or hear more about you?
Well, they can Google me. I pop up on a lot of things. I work with Creating a Family, which has a kinship care program as well. I'm a minister at Unity of the Blue Ridge in Mills River. And so any of those locations, and Grand Blessing's phone number is 828-337-3688.
Thank you for being with us. And folks, follow along. This is probably not the last time you'll hear from DeBorah and all the work that she's doing out in the western part of our state. Thanks, y'all. And we're going to throw it a break, and we'll be back to debrief more of the HOP program.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Do You Even Live Here? We're just wrapping up an interview that we had with DeBorah Ogiste, who was talking a little about the HOP program that Preston is super familiar with. And I'm really blown away. I enjoyed that so much and enjoyed the chance to meet her. I know, Preston, that you've known DeBorah for a long time, or at least since this program has begun and y'all navigating this. But that was my first time, and coming away from that conversation really blown away.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Dalton. Again, I've known DeBorah for many years now, and we've interacted in really casual spaces. So it was really good to sit down and have an intimate conversation with her, because I learned things about her that I did not know. I mean, even from advocating for HOP, but also talking about the foster care system. So deeply appreciative of her commentary and her story. I think she's a great advocate, and her story needs to be raised up a lot more. So I'm glad we were able to do that.
Well, and I just want to, not to brag on this, but, so few shows, I think, really try to emphasize the stories, not just to the folks that are at the top of the ticket in major elections or, these folks that are grabbing headlines, but the people that are really navigating the systems that we often pontificate about, right? And these thought exercises or these media shows. And DeBorah not only having the firsthand experience, but being able to advocate for herself through her storytelling, I think is inspiring. And, if you think about that first day you called me and said, "Hey, Dalton, we should start a podcast," I think the people that we were thinking about having on the show are folks like DeBorah.
One of the things I really want to raise up, and I think about a lot, is just this notion that folk can work hard and get all the things that the American dream promises. And DeBorah is somebody that worked hard her entire life, and because of various circumstances, she wasn't afforded all the things that, again, the American dream promises. We have all these legislators and people in government that say that these people want a handout. And I think DeBorah put it so incredibly well that it's not a handout, it's a hand up. And her story, I hope, will resonate with people, our listeners throughout North Carolina and hopefully beyond. The Healthy Opportunities pilot was critical in Western North Carolina. And again, states are copying this model because it worked. So hopefully we can get it back funded. And, one of the things DeBorah talked about so eloquently was community. And most recently, one of the things I'm really proud of is a proclamation for Endangered Species Day. We were super excited to be able to do that in Fletcher. And I know Dalton has done some incredible advocacy work, not only locally in Boone, but nationwide for Endangered Species Day. So I think it would be more than fitting to throw it over to my co-host, Dalton George. Let's talk about Endangered Species Day, dude.
Yeah, thanks, Preston. So Boone did the same. I want to shout out Fletcher for doing it. Durham actually also did it. So shout out Nate Baker, city councilman there, that put it on the agenda. Those are the 3 North Carolina towns I know for sure did it this year. So those are my favorite communities right now and my favorite elected officials. But I think it's an important day to celebrate wildlife, wild places, critters that mean something to our community. And actually, this is so timely. The Atlantic just came out with an article, and I'll read the headline. It basically says how the environmental movement lost its power and how to get it back. And in it, it talks about how we've talked so much about climate change and decarbonization, all these very scientific words, which are awesome and important, right? Climate change, we got to do something about. However, climate change conversations don't inspire the same feeling of awe that you get when you look out at something like the Blue Ridge Parkway, when you go on a hike, when you look out at the Western North Carolina where you and I live, Preston, where you're like, I want to fight for this place. There's something about looking out at wilderness and seeing wildlife that you share a community with that makes you want to fight and allows you to pull people into the movement that aren't scientists, that aren't climate experts, all of these different things. And to me, it's why I fight. So also as a part of that Atlantic article, is this mention of two of the biggest wins that we've had on environmental causes. And the second one they list behind public lands was the win on Earth Day for the Endangered Species Act, as we got the House to pull from the floor the ESA Amendments Act, which wouldn't have repealed the Endangered Species Act, but it would have severely weakened its authority to be effective, kind of like what they did to the Voting Rights Act, where they're saying, oh, we didn't repeal the Voting Rights Act, we just made it way less effective at doing what it was intended to do, protect voters. Very creative what we're seeing from the folks at the federal level. And so it meant a lot to me to see my small part in that win, the 120, 130 folks that were there on Earth Day on the Hill as a part of that, and kind of this monumental shift in the environmental world. And I talk about it a lot. I'll talk about it on this podcast, but it's such an exciting time. The other thing I'll talk about as I get the floor for Endangered Species Day is you would be amazed at endangered species that are near you. So you might be wondering, why would Durham pass a resolution like that, right? What's going on in Durham? I thought it was just young urban professionals having craft beers and watching sports games. I didn't know endangered critters lived there. But I have news for you. It's more than just that, right? And same with Raleigh. It's got a lot of endangered species. There's actually a Carolina mad tom, which is right in the waters, only in North Carolina. It's a very small catfish. Look it up. He looks awesome. Also, what a name, right? Carolina mad tom. Are you kidding me? We need to rename our football team.
I am flipping out about that, dude. Geeking out. I'm about to Google it to see what it looks like, and we got to put it. We got to put it on the screen. The Carolina mad what?
Mad Tom. TOM. Carolina mad
Tom. Are there any sports teams named after that? We need to make it happen. No. You're right. What?
And it only lives in North Carolina. Another really cool one, as you're Googling it, is the Neuse River water dog. Only lives in North Carolina. It's a salamander, and you can find it in streams near Raleigh and Durham, maybe in some cases in Raleigh and Durham if we did a better job of getting rid of sediment. And again, it's like, man, like that's something to be really proud of. These two species only live in this state. They live in our capital of all places. And so the challenge I would put to everybody is recognizing, like, get outside, even if it's a creek in your city, it might be home to something that's really special. And also, like, push your local governments to embrace this. Man, if a Carolina Mad Tom lived here, you better believe we'd have a Carolina Mad Tom mural. So I don't know what our Raleigh or Durham folks are doing, but y'all need to get on that.
God dang right. And also, dude, talking about those critters that live in the water, I know we're running out of time here, but you went fly fishing recently. Tell us about the experience. This is on the fly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No pun intended. This is on the fly. But tell us about the experience.
Well, yeah, I went fly fishing for the first time, and my girlfriend is really good at fly fishing. I'm not as good, but really enjoyed it. So I think before we started recording, I think we're going to plan a trip with you, me, and Jeremy Borden, the executive director of Beacon and producer of the show, and fly fish a bit. I think we're all about the same skill level of having fly fish like once or twice. So it'll be a fun learning curve. I did not catch anything. I really want to catch a brook trout, which is the only native trout in this area. And it's a really pretty fish too. So I'm on a mission for a brook trout.
And maybe we can go fly fishing together. That's what we've been talking about. Me, you, some of our other team members on Do You Even Live Here, all get out there and fly fish. And perhaps we can go in one of the oldest rivers in the world, which is where, Dalton?
It's in Fletcher and in Western North Carolina, the French Broad and its tributaries, which really bummed me out. I will say to everybody listening, I was at a bar with Preston, and I thought that the New River, which is here in Boone, was older than the French Broad. I knew they were both some of the oldest rivers in the world, but the French Broad River is actually the third oldest river in the world, and the New River, I believe, is the fourth. So if you're in Asheville, you got that on us.
Hey, we all can't be winners, Dalton. It's okay. And we have the Cane Creek River, which is a tributary of the French Broad River. We got some great rivers out here, great rivers up there. Maybe we'll go fly fishing in them. Who knows?
Absolutely. Again, I guess the learning lesson, like you included that in your proclamation. And so I would just encourage everybody on this Endangered Species Day, like get out there, connect with the area you're at, be proud of it, right? Like if you're in Fletcher, I mean, obviously if you're in Western North Carolina, you're near nature, but it's like, that's something to be proud of, right? Hey, I'm neighbors with one of the oldest rivers in the entire world. I think the oldest in North America. Maybe the Susquehanna has a beat, but really incredible stuff. And for Endangered Species Day, get out there, talk to your legislator, call a sports team, make sure when the MLB comes here, it's the Carolina Mad Toms in Durham, and we'll call it a day. What can we say?
There we go. I'm Preston Blake. Do You Even Live Here? The mayor of Fletcher, and I heard my co-host,
Dalton George, the mayor of Boone. Thanks for listening, y'all, and we will see y'all next week.